Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Bill Lennon returning for a second episode. This is a continuation of where we ended before we got to complete what we wanted to talk about in the first episode. So, Bill, welcome back.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thanks for making the time and jumping back on for an episode. I thought maybe what we wanted to touch on this time was a bit more on the staying relevant in IT, considering that there's such dramatic shifts and seismic things that are happening in the industry at the moment, or it's really like the GPT wave, I'll call it, and then sort of how that's affected everything, because I think it's really accelerated a lot of the problems or a lot of the reservations people are having.
Right. Yeah.
What are you seeing? Because you're over there, you're in California, so you're you're seeing it at a different level than I am down here in Melbourne.
Yeah, and also I've been starting to interview a lot more executives to get their perspective on what is and isn't working in general, right? So, my thinking has been evolving. I think the first thing is that no one that I've talked to says you can replace great coders with AI yet, right? Yet being probably the important part there. And I know people that are building prototypes using AI, and the ones that are really successful, they're getting backed up with their code by having actual software engineers go and look at it and review it and figure out what works, and is the AI causing security flaws, and all the things that normally a live human being would be thinking about in advance, but because AI is kind of a black box, we're not really sure if it's doing the stuff that Mary sitting next to me would have been doing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important part of it. The other thing that seems to be happening is that a friend of mine just posted about this, and this is going to have an impact, is that the economics of AI are still very fuzzy, and so it's like anything else in business, right? When you're thinking about a business, you want some degree of predictability. Like, I know that the lease on my office is going to be X number of dollars per month. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't work very well if my lease was super flexible. And some of the costs associated with running AI can be very flexible. That could make it unsustainable, right? It might make things easier, but at the same time, if you don't have the appropriate ROI, then it doesn't make sense, right? And it's the same thing like Google AdWords. You put a cap on how much your spend is going to be on a daily basis, right? Or week or month or whatever the time frame is. Until we have a really good control on our pricing, that's going to make it hard to adopt, right? Yeah. And I think the other thing is, since we started doing technology stuff years ago, people need to be paying attention to what the trends are in their part of the world. Their vertical or the verticals they care about, and kind of continuing education, right? You have to always be learning what's the new stuff, what are people doing, what's getting faster, what's become outmoded, to stay not just relevant, but thinking about what's going to happen next month, And I think it's still, you've got to be a problem solver. You've got to be somebody who thinks about the end user's experience. I think a lot more of the architect and the product manager style thinking needs to be everybody's frame, not just how to write the code. Because it's kind of like nobody writes machine code anymore. Right? There's only a tiny fraction of people that do that, right? Yeah. And the rest of us aren't writing operating systems or things that even are at that level. Right? Everything's moved up, abstracted up multiple layers. Coding's going to be kind of the next thing, when we're going to see that. Yeah.
And I think a couple of things that you touched on points sort of like the essential skills. So being able to problem solve and be creative and work with clients. That it doesn't matter what's happening in industry. That is a skill you should be developing and you need to have,
Right.
because whether
Yeah.
AI comes in or it doesn't, that will keep you separated from everyone else that is just either focusing on development or just
Yes.
trying to be like pigeonholed or siloed into a certain role.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's always good to be able to have communication skills and to learn how to talk with people and find out what's going on, and if nothing else, it's improving your understanding of the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
And I think people get blindsided when they're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do this thing and I'll be fine doing this thing for the rest of my life. And then they discovered that thing suddenly disappeared. Like,
Yeah.
nobody cared.
It doesn't stay around forever. It's just,
Right.
it's technology is a rapid changing industry.
Right.
And it's just, it seems like the pace of change is accelerating faster than what anyone expected.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're speaking to these executives, what are you sort of seeing across the board, like as their consensus on, all right, they must do AI, which I'm pretty sure they're all saying, but I'm assuming that they don't have enough clarity on what it can actually do for them or how it's going to benefit.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've heard multiple things in the last few months. One of the things was we tried AI, didn't do us any good, wasn't a net positive, and we quit using it.
Okay.
Right? Which kind of speaks to the we're not quite sure how to use it effectively yet, and the cost part, right? And I've had people say it actually slowed down our coding throughput, when nobody wants that, right? That's terrible. Other people are they're finding niches where it really helps them. One of the folks that I talked with said this. This is a guy who helps implementation, right? He's not specifically a coder, but getting the customers up and running and using the APIs and stuff for the company is the important part. For them, because the team there they don't really have the coding background. They understand the perspective and the ideas. They're using AI to give them a human readable, what does this code do? Because the notes aren't good enough. Right?
Never enough comments.
Right. The comments just don't tell them what's really going on here, right?
Yep.
And so rather than do that, they tell the AI, explain to me what this code all does in a way that I can make sense of it. And that way, when their customer's having a challenge or they're trying to explain to the customer, they've got better knowledge, right? And that's a very kind of narrow niche problem solution kind of space. The people that are writing the code on the back end, they're not using AI to write the code.
Yep.
That's still human beings, fingers on the keyboard kind of thing. And then, there's other people that they're kind of writing prototype code, right? They're doing the vibe coding thing.
Yep.
To build out clickable prototypes, right? And that way they can take a prototype and they can whatever, show it to somebody, and then go, is this kind of what you were thinking? And if you can make that process faster, then great. But it's not like it's going to take away anybody's job completely. I have not heard of. So far, nobody's told me they're using AI as a replacement for QA, which I think is a really critical component.
I just did a podcast about an hour ago. Finished up with a person running an AI QA product.
Oh, how was it?
Is replacing. He says it's replacing QAs completely. So if in the same amount of time they can write one like Selenium test, they can write 1,000 AI tests.
That is the first I've heard of that. Okay, so things are changing rapidly. That's good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
I think there's a lot of stuff in the news here in Australia where some of the bigger banks are removing staff, and you're hearing about it globally. Like you hear Amazon gets rid of 1,000 people, Microsoft gets rid of 11,000 or whatever. These like huge numbers of people just going away. But then you hear sometimes like, all right, one bank I think got rid of 400 people, but then they rehired 500 months later, and then apparently they're going to higher valued jobs or higher positions. I'm not sure, But it is starting to come in, especially I think at like that customer service level.
Mm-hmm.
Developers not yet because the tools are still getting there. But I think you've got this consensus across the industry. If you look online, so you look on X or Reddit, and you see
Right.
anyone that's talking about vibe coding, you've got startups and entrepreneurs don't know anything about development. This is the best thing ever. I can build an app and I don't need you. Then you've got the developers going, you're going to have security problems. He can never write code as good as me. It'll never do this. It'll never do that. A lot of the consensus or the vocal minority is it's not going to get there.
Right. Right. I think it's just it's a question of when, right?
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
old enough that when I first started doing internet stuff, I had people tell me that the this internet thing wasn't going to last. That it was too wide open, that it couldn't scale, and that everything was going to be dial-up BBSs.
Yep.
And they were, because that's the business they were in, right? And fortunately, they were horribly wrong, right?
Yep.
And so it's just a question of what's the velocity, what's the solution rate. When we started doing TCP/IP stuff, the underpinnings of all of this, people had ideas for things, but we couldn't execute on them, right?
Yep.
People were like, "Oh, hey, we can do business, right?" And PayPal and the other financial instruments weren't there yet, even though somebody had a vision. And there was a lot of pieces, security and APIs being constructed and being standardized, and all the legalities,
Yep.
money in between countries, all that stuff that had to be sorted out. And we're kind of in the same space again,
Yeah. But I think
and
we're probably building off a better level though, because that groundwork has already been laid.
right.
I think.
It has, and we kind of there's a baseline, and then we go, oh wait a minute, there's a new baseline that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, 64-bit encryption was thought to be enough.
Yep.
And then it was, it's 128, and then it's 512, and now it's, oh wait a minute, you can crack all this stuff with a quantum computer in 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do now? Right now it's multi-factor, and it's kind of this ongoing race, and so that we have a better baseline this time around, definitely, yeah. But I think there's going to be things that are going to pop up, and history has just shown this pattern that we didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
and then we go, oh whoops, we never thought about that, and we get into it, and I think a lot of the non-technical startup founders, they're like, recently I saw an article. There was somebody had an app up on I can't remember if it was Android or on the Apple App Store, but people started using it and they discovered that it had some horrible security flaw. Now, there was only a few hundred users at that point in time, so early, right? You can nip it in the bud, but if you're a founder who doesn't think about that kind of stuff, you're going to make mistakes. As time goes on, the AI is going to become smart enough that when you say, hey, code me this, blah, 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 it's going to reply back and go, what about the security of the data? How do you want to approach that, right? And then at some point in time, it's going to go, you got three options. Do you want door number 2, door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? Which, if a software developer would be thinking the exact same thought, right?
Yep.
But it's still going to be, what is it that the end user wants? It's kind of like building houses.
Well, they're the ones that, you have to get the value out of whatever it is that's being generated or created. So unless there's something there for them, just because like a startup founder can quickly build a prototype, doesn't mean they should still continue with that to turn it into a business. Because the business fundamentals aren't there. And what you were saying before earlier, like the ROI sort of isn't measured at that corporate level. I think that's because either they've been sort of misled on what the capabilities of AI are at the moment. And everyone's saying like AGI, ASI, like it's going to be, it's a thinking, it's got its own mind, it can do whatever it wants, but it's still not at that level. We're not there. It's not that.
Exactly. Yeah. And, there's these AI companions you can talk with, right? I doubt they're going to actually replace people. Like there are going to be people that are going to fall in love with that thing because they don't think very far and they feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to take a while before the cost of that, number one, and the actual functionality is going to be seriously usable. And the cost is always going to be at the end of the day. Yeah, you can have an AI robot, whatever, like we've seen in movies, right?
Yep.
But the cost is the sooner or later, it's like, okay, you're a billionaire, you can buy one. Elon's got one that guards his kids, right? Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's
He can do whatever he wants.
yeah. That's okay. That's a case of one. Yeah, he has a rocket that can go to space. Doesn't mean that I'm going to get one next week.
Yeah. I think on that level, like on the robots, I think that Optimus robot is about 50 or 100,000 was somewhere the range to purchase one. And you mentioned like that's not going to be available to the general person.
Right.
You're not
right.
going to buy a robot over buying a car if you're looking for something like that's what you're trading off at that point.
Right. Right. And what's it going to do for you?
Yeah.
Like, and how, what's the functionality? And like, I always think about, okay, what is it that people do really, really well? Nurses, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be really hard to get a robot nurse to go in and take care of people in a way that's effective. I mean, we don't have anything that's really robotic in a clinical setting that I've seen. We have things that are human controlled that do things like brain surgery, right? But there's really no automated systems outside of the data entry, insurance management stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the machines themselves, which may have robotic parts, but not completely autonomous things that are running around. Right. And that sort of misconception on what they can do, is you seeing that as sort of like the main thing that's misleading, like at that corporate level, trying to go out, do an initiative and it not working?
Yeah, I think it's easy for people to be all hyped up about it. And there's, over the decades, there's been all kinds of things that have been super hyped up here in Silicon Valley, hopefully less so in other parts of the planet. And because it feels kind of sad if it's as hyped up here. If every place is as hyped up as it's just not good, right? And so it's a great idea, but it needs to mature. It needs time to get built up. There's infrastructure, the cost stuff, how to get everybody to benefit from it. And people are like, oh, it's the coolest thing. And, whatever their imagination is, but they don't have an actual pragmatic, here's how it's going to make somebody's life better tomorrow, right? Or 10 minutes from now. And I think it kind of always goes back to, well, if I had a live human being to go do that, what would they be doing? How would that make things better? And how do we, how do we replicate that? Like virtual assistants are great because it's a live human being. I can actually talk to them. We can talk about business processes and all that stuff. And I have a pretty good ability to predict behaviors. Mm-hmm. And they can have imagination and do problem solving.
Yep.
You don't know that the AI is going to be able to do that in the same kind of way that we understand.
Yeah, true. Because while it's read and seen everything we've ever made as people, it doesn't have that. Like I say, it can be creative, but I think it has the maturity or like the emotional intelligence level of what a person may have to be able to give you the right thing at the right time. That's why it will never work sort of like in the nursing aspect, because there has to be care and empathy.
Right. Yeah. And, it's funny. I was just working on a piece that I'm writing about helping your teams by understanding your people's desire. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking around, I'm like, has anybody really documented the top 10 desires of people? And, Maslow's hierarchy is a way to look at it, but how do you look at it from a different granularity? And I found stuff, but I don't agree with it. I'm like, oh, okay, great. They're researchers are saying that because they talk to 20 people, these is everybody's desires. And I'm like, well, okay, that's
Such a
20
small
people.
sample size.
Yeah, simplest. And once you start going to other countries and other cultures, they have very different kinds of desires. And you need to move around to really understand it. And so even if it's been written, it doesn't make it accurate. Right?
Correct.
That's the challenge is if nobody's done the research in that particular direction and their sample size is small, then the AI is going to actually have a bad answer.
Yeah, because it can only use what it's seen
Right,
to then
right.
create or suggest new things.
Yeah, yeah. And human behavior is we as a species have not done enough broad documentation. Academics just don't seem to do that very well. They get very narrow focused, and they don't look at the outlier data very well. And I think that's an area where it's going to take a lot of research, and AI is not just going to magically all of a sudden fill that void.
Yeah, then people have a tendency just to see something and then take it at face value,
Right.
whether it's fake or real at the moment. There's not much of a distinction.
Exactly. It's just they'll see it and they'll go, "Oh, well, this must be true for everybody," right?
Yeah.
Because it says in writing to everybody, like whatever it happens to be, and because of confirmation bias, people will just see things matching that belief they have.
Yeah, and then that's it. They're on their way.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
dangerous because without the
Yes.
skepticism or the curiosity, then to go further, or you'll either take fake things as truth and think true things are fake.
Right. Right.
They always say truth is stranger than fiction. Like sometimes you'll tell a story and you're like, I couldn't have written that. I couldn't have made that up if I wanted to.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, in covering all of that, then is someone in in IT at the moment with all this change that's happening? What are you talking, or how are you seeing, or what are you suggesting to people to then keep sort of like the enthusiasm going and stay in the industry? Because if you're at your university or college, and you're studying, say, computer science, I don't know what's going through your head at the moment.
Yeah. I would, in all seriousness, I would start looking at a much broader skill set to really understand humans in other contexts and to expand the kinds of problems you can recognize. You know, we don't have to write machine code anymore, right? It's been decades since anybody thought about writing machine code. And so if you were studying that, you'd have to find the niche where you could actually get a job, right? I think computer science is on its way to being in that direction. It's not there yet, but we have a surplus of programmers right now. And 20 years ago there was a scarcity, but because there was so much focus on, get a computer science degree, become a software engineer, in a lot of different parts of the world, now we've got more than we know what to do with, right? Yep. And so you have to be able to level yourself up or differentiate in some direction. If you can be an implementation engineer, there's not as many software engineers that are comfortable talking to people because people in the tech space tend to go into that because they're more introverted. Yep. You've got to learn how to navigate out of there, right? It's a skill set to go talk to people that you can learn. You just have to want to go learn how to do that, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of software engineers that are going to have to find a different kind of a thing. I like building stuff, like period, right? Yep. And so for me, it's been fun to learn carpentry and plumbing and roofing and like the building trades, right? I've got a background as an auto mechanic. I'm looking forward to learning how to weld, And one of my kids is going to mechanicking, and the other one is curious about welding,
Hmm.
and those guys make bank.
Yep.
You know, and so if you're it, it's not a dishonor to you or your family to make a career pivot and go, you know what, this career track is going to be shrinking, but there's a huge demand for welders.
Yep. I think that they'll end up facing sort of that same challenge, especially like welding and things like that, where it's a repeatable process. There's machinery can come in, the robots, like again, but that's probably a longer time horizon
Right. Yeah.
in my mind than what we did with the programming. But the programming
Right.
just seemed like it came on really, really quickly at the start of the year. Because up
Yeah.
until that, there wasn't good. The models weren't. They were okay, but they weren't good enough to help people write enough code.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that they're sort of like snowballed.
Yeah. Well, and it's been, more people doing it, more people are getting better at it. They're figuring out prompts, and it goes back to the money thing, right? We're gonna have to, and nobody's really talking about the fact that running all those AI queries is is very expensive from electrical perspective.
Yep.
Like it's completely anti-green.
It's as far opposite as green as you can get at
Yeah,
the moment.
yeah, and nobody wants to talk about that, and they don't want to talk about things like Google had a press release recently that they're going to build a nuclear power plant to run an AI data center.
Yeah, I think Microsoft has leased 3 Mile Island in
Uh,
is it in
yeah,
New York, so they can then
yeah,
bring that back online. And I
yeah,
think OpenAI has been doing something like that as well. Or Sam Altman is investing in nuclear energy or fission to be able to then support those as well.
right,
And then there's other ones
right,
where they're building the power centers next to the data centers,
right,
so there's
right,
no transmission lag.
exactly. And so we're it's an expensive proposition to run the electricity for that stuff. Are we getting the ROI out of it, right?
Yeah.
And everything has unintended consequences. And so, like, there was an article pretty recently that students in college that are using AI a lot are dumber than students that aren't, because they don't remember what the AI tells them to
Yeah.
write, and so they aren't actually learning anything. Which I that means I don't want to hire you. That's an anti-pattern,
Yeah.
right? And so that consequence is an issue. And so I always think, okay, where's the balance point where the labor reduction is actually causing a whole set of problems that we hadn't considered before we ran the experiment, and now we're like, oh, whoops, that's a problem, right?
Yeah. And there are people throwing out the terms like that universal basic income and these other things, saying at some point this is going to take everyone's general jobs, and then what are people going to do? And I guess that's probably one of those consequences where there are some people thinking about it, but
Yeah.
all these other people are getting, there's so much benefit we're getting at the moment, and that's like beyond my control. It's not, it's above my pay grade to think about that almost.
Yeah, and I don't think it's actually above anybody's pay grade. I think
Well,
it's
it'll
something that you
affect
should.
everyone. It's society. It's a
Right,
societal
right.
issue.
And I think also, so last time that we talked, was I in the country?
Yeah, you're at your
At the
farm or
farm,
your
right?
ranch. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I can't remember
yeah,
what word you used.
yeah. I bounce back and forth between farm and ranch. But the thing that I'm realizing out there is that, until the Industrial Revolution hit, people didn't live in cities, not like we do today, right? Everybody had small farms,
Hmm.
and in city-ish areas, outside of a few areas that had high rises, most of it was kind of suburban looking on big lots, and people had small farms in their backyard.
Hmm.
And we've lost all that. And so maybe we need to get it back.
Yeah.
Maybe everybody living this, because right now, like here in Silicon Valley, everything that we eat comes in from a distribution center, except for the tiny fraction of people that go to the farmer's market,
Yeah, and it's
right?
the same here in where we are in Melbourne. Like,
Yeah, same thing in Melbourne, right?
yeah,
And so when you don't have control of your food supply, that's kind of a problem. It's an unintended consequence of kind of where we've gone. And there's a whole skill set around all that anybody who's in technology can learn. It's actually quite simple. And it's good to know, oh yeah, I'm not going to starve to death because I've got chickens and eggs and my neighbor's got a cow with milk and I've got vegetables and like all that stuff, right? And I think maybe the experiment of super high population density has maxed out because none of those high population density cities can exist without all that supply chain. And if AI takes over the driving of all the trucks, then and the management of the supply chain centers, then all those people that are currently working just in food alone, right?
yeah,
Just getting the food from the field to the grocery store here, that's a lot of jobs, right? That could go away. But if you are growing your own food and you're taking care of your own stuff, it totally changes the scale of what you're doing. But it's completely doable.
It's a big shift because then you're just going to a more like simpler, manageable
What
everything.
way?
At the moment, nothing's in your
Yeah.
control almost. You
Right.
work because you have to pay for everything.
Right. Right. And all of a sudden, oh, I don't, if I don't have to pay for food anymore because I'm growing it all, or I'm bartering with my neighbor because, I've got beef and they've got milk, then life becomes a whole lot simpler in a lot of ways, and your cost basis goes way down,
Yeah.
right? And you learn a bunch of new skills, and it's healthy to be outside.
Yeah, definitely. But that's probably almost taking it to the extreme, though. If you're in the current space and you're thinking,
It is, but
where's it gonna,
yeah,
where am I gonna go, or where's this gonna go? And we don't know how long it's gonna take, but you probably need to start preparing for something like you mentioned earlier, something outside of your current skill set, so that you can either move horizontally, bounce between different industries, or start picking up something
yeah,
else to move into if it does hit that faster than
right,
everyone's expecting.
yeah. It's if there is an AI quantum computing utopia where nobody has to do anything, that's going to be problematic because just from a mental health perspective, people need challenges.
Yeah,
We need stuff to do. People don't do well when they just sit around all day long and watch YouTube videos. That's super unhealthy, and so they need that challenge. What are you going to do? That's you know, what are you going to build? What problems are you going to solve?
yeah. It
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing to think about, to
yeah,
say the
yeah.
least.
It's the opposite of Orwell's 1984. You're going completely the other direction and going back to a whole different kind of perspective. Use technology where it makes sense,
Yep.
but we know now that you can have a company that's all over the place, right?
Yep.
Doesn't matter where anybody's located, and so why be in a high population density area? It's
Yeah,
not
true. You've got
beneficial.
choice now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just before we close out, so what are your sort of thoughts on anyone listening that's sorry in the space and thinking, all right, AI is definitely something I need to do, or is there sort of like a preferred thing that they should start learning, like those soft skills, or is it more just being able to be more of a generalist, so you can then bounce between things?
I think the first thing is soft skills. Yeah, that's a really good question. And if you look at like everything you're doing in business is doing business with other people. And so the better you are at that human communication dynamic, the more flexibility you have versus all you can do is code. And even when in the high demand times, 15, 20 years ago, when we didn't have nearly as many developers available as we do now, the developers who did really well were also really good communicators, because software development's a team sport.
Yep.
And so working on that, working on the communication skills, working on your conversation ability and your curiosity and your ability to just think and talk and research and network is I think the most important thing you can do. It's going to get you more information so you can be more effective at work. And it's, as somebody who had really bad social anxiety for decades, and reversed that, I know it's doable. It takes some work, but it's far from impossible. I'm not the only one to do this.
You can definitely, it's a skill, and just like every skill, the more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly.
I was a developer, but I was more of the vocal people compared to the ones at like uni. So then you get in front, you become the leader of the project when you work in group projects at school. And then in the business, my business partners, I'm more technical, so I took the technical side and he took the BD customer side.
Yep.
But I can run a podcast and I can have a conversation with people.
Right.
And this is a great tool to practice.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah.
And then you go and meet people, and then you can just talk to clients. Like, it just over time it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the piece that probably should be part of every computer science degree, is a whole focus in there on interpersonal effectiveness.
Yeah. I don't teach you anything about that. It's just, this is how you code, these are data structures, and off you go.
Yeah. Which is
it's a disservice almost, because they're not allowing people to, it's sort of putting them in the pigeonhole before they've even started.
Right. Yeah. So, I good, bad, or indifferent, I was totally self-taught. Like, I just started learning how to code because I was curious about it. And so I already was starting to work on my social anxiety to a very small degree when I started doing software engineering.
Yep. I think you had the coffee. Is it the coffee process where you go and just talk to someone, say their name or say hello and ask them some questions?
The
coffee shop, I think it was.
Yeah. How's your day? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the starting point. How's your day going? Right. And then just, build in tiny increments on top of that. But that was, it wasn't that it was physically hard. It was emotionally challenging to do it when I started. But the first conversations were arguably the hardest, because when I started going up to, like, when I started doing presentations, for example, with my software team as a test audience, right? It was easier than talking to folks in Starbucks had been, because I'd already had some practice. And so, and also my software team was super friendly and, like, happy to help. It was the best audience I could possibly have.
Yep.
That was, they were wonderful for that. But that got me to the next step, right? And it's just little increments and getting, and doors opened that I didn't know were even there before, because I could talk to people. There's all of a sudden thing, because other people notice, right?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, Anthony's really good at talking to people. Hey, Anthony, do you want to work on this project that you didn't even know existed, right?
Yeah, the opportunities present themselves, because now you're seen as more valuable. You can contribute more. You're not just the person in the corner who doesn't have ideas, isn't creative, can't lead something, whatever else that list goes on to.
Yeah. I think that's the most important skill that gets overlooked.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's important to grow. It's just, it is difficult for some people to start, but again, starting's the hardest part, like you said.
Right. Yeah. And once you get started and you get a habit going of, I'm going to practice this every day, it gets to be easy in a pretty short amount of time. For me, it was 2 weeks. Other people I've taught, they've come back and said it took them a week. And I'm like, okay, great. You're way faster than me, which is a
as long
total
as it
win.
works, it doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, awesome. If it only took you a week, congratulations. What's the next hurdle? right?
Yep.
And so anybody can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing, because that sets you up for more career flexibility than just, oh, I know how to write code and manage AWS.
Yep. Yeah. And then if the wave keeps growing and taking over people's jobs, you're setting yourself up in a better position to then move forward and ride the wave, or move out of the
Yeah.
way and go to something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't lose.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no downside. It's all upside. Yeah.
Well, Bill, just conscious of the time.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you again, and
Thank you.
I
Thank you. It's
appreciate
super
you
fun.
coming on for a second time.
Of course.
Just once again, if anyone wants to reach out and find out more about you, LinkedIn, and how else could they do that?
LinkedIn, or send me an email. I'm bill@40pb.com, number 4, number 0, letter P, letter B.com.
Awesome. Well, once again, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for jumping on the DevReady podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.